afternoon, good evening. I don't know when you are looking this amazing video, but it's a pleasure to have you here. As you know, I'm Diego Barbosa-Vásquez, opera, orchestra, and ballet conductor from Colombia, and we are doing this amazing series of pre-talks for our next concert with the Columbus Symphony Orchestra on October 22nd at the Commons, 3:30 p.m. in Columbus, Indiana. And we are talking about the amazing pieces and the people behind these amazing pieces, the composers and the musicians that are going to play for you. And today we have an amazing guest, Rina Esmail, Indian American composer of the piece that we are going to do, Avartan. And we also have Becky Grill, that is one of our board of directors at our clarinet too, that is part of the orchestra. And we want to know a little bit of all of you. Therefore, let me start asking you, tell us your story, how you ended up in the music, who are you?
I guess I'll start. Yeah, I'm Rina. I'm based in Los Angeles. I'm a composer, but I didn't necessarily start as a composer. I think like most people who discover music, we see people on stage performing and we think, oh, that looks really awesome. I want to do that. So my major instrument is the piano, and I played piano very seriously for many years. But I realized very quickly that I'm not a performer, that when you put me in front of people, I just freeze. And so I thought, how cool is it to have a type of music that I can do as a career where I never have to get on a stage? So that's how I first decided to become a composer. And I don't know, I just love building these environments where I can kind of put people in relationships to one another. And, you know, when you kind of engineer a space where people can create relationships, you can do that in so many ways. And that's, I just love that idea. So yeah, that is what made me want to become a composer. But from there, you know, I had a pretty standard education. I went to conservatories. I did my undergrad at Juilliard. I did my master's and doctoral degree at Yale. You can see my shirt. I have a Yale sweatshirt on today. But what is interesting is during that entire time, I got a Western musical education. So I learned to write for choirs and orchestras and chamber ensembles. And, you know, that in itself is just hard enough, right? There's so much that you have to do to even be able to do that well. But at the same time, I thought to myself, you know, I come from a different culture. My family is Indian, and I don't want to have a life where because I choose to do a certain kind of music, I'm then not in touch with my own culture. So, you know, at that time, probably almost 15 years ago now, bringing other cultures into Western culture and Western music was not a thing that just everyone did the way that they do today. And so I certainly received a lot of pushback for it in the early days. And it just felt like something that I wanted to do because I love these two cultures so much. And, you know, like anyone who's from different places, you just want to see all the worlds that you inhabit interact with one another. And so that is what I've spent pretty much the past, you know, decade and a half of my life doing.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah. And we totally get that in your piece. And we are going to talk more in depth about that, how you are able to communicate, to transform both worlds, the world that we have as a history of music or Western music, and the world that you have as a music from a different culture, and how both can be the same thing. Becky, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I had some piano lessons when I was 6 or 7, but I didn't get it. I didn't understand notation, and I really not my idea to play the piano. So after about a year, you know, my parents said, "This is ridiculous," and I said, "Yippee!" But then, you know, I became a product of music education in the public schools in Evansville, Indiana. So it was time for a beginning band. I chose the clarinet just because I knew somebody a little older who I thought was kind of cool, and she played the clarinet. So I started playing clarinet, you know, it's been 50 years ago. And I just really, I remember the day in 5th grade, I got kind of good. But I remember the day when all of a sudden notation made sense. And I was sitting there with my clarinet and looking up at the staff that was hanging on the wall, and you know, the light came on. So then I went home and begged for piano lessons again, and my mom said, "Oh, absolutely not. You know, we already wasted all that money." And I am blaming my mother, because everyone I know who says, "Oh, I wish I could still play. I wish I kept up with lessons," they all say, "My mom let me quit." So anyway, I went through high school mooching off of all my friends who took private lessons. So I played some trumpet etudes a lot on the clarinet, and I had a friend who took piano lessons, and she was working on the Bach two-part invention. So I saved my allowance and bought that book. And then finally, I made a friend who was studying clarinet with Dr. David Wright at the University of Evansville. So I went over and played for him, and he said, "Well, we have a lot of work to do, but I'll take you." And then when it came time to start university, he said, here's what we will do for you. And I didn't see a reason to look elsewhere. So I got a bachelor's degree in music ed from the University of Evansville. Just a really, really great place. Very, very thankful for all that they taught me. And then I've taught ever since. For about the last almost 30 years. I've lived in Seymour after a stint in Chicago and a stint in Huntsville, Alabama. And not long after we moved here, I started playing with the CSO. And I played about 10 years, and then my family got a little out of hand. I had to stop for a bit and get my kids raised. And then when the last one left for college, I started playing again. And I really love to play with other people. And I also still play a lot of piano. My job is K-8 vocal, instrumental, general music. So I play a lot of piano all day, every day. And on the weekends, I'm a church organist. I started that about 6 years ago. Very, very hard. I had no idea how hard it would be. I thought if you could play the piano, you could play the organ. And I've had a lot of fun learning that. But clarinet's my first love. So yeah.
That's amazing. That's amazing. There is something that really struck me when you say that is the fact of notation that you were talking at the beginning, that at your first stage the notation was something that was difficult. And when I started to study your piece, Rina, something that really like was not difficult but just outside my knowledge was this is based on a very specific cultural music of Indian. And I just started to think about how were the difficulties about composing the piece, because you did an amazing job, created all of these singing patterns that helped me a lot to understand what is going there. But how was the process of putting this music that in many ways is improvisative, that in many ways is oral tradition, and now put it, as you say, all organized to be done by so many people at the same time? How was this process?
Yeah, I mean, that essentially has been the backbone of my composing process. And actually, you know, Becky, before I even dive into it, I'll just say your thing about notation completely that kind of resonated with me too, because I think we all have these moments where, especially those of us who kind of realize we're musical at a young age, where something becomes clear and you realize like, oh, there's something so deep here that I can't even begin to enumerate as a child, but I know that I kind of have to follow it. And for me, that moment was, you know, before I played piano, I played guitar. That was my first instrument. And there was a point where I realized that I knew that I could hear the chord progressions behind songs. And of course, you know, most songs are like 3 chords or something. But if you're a kid and you understand that, my classmates were like, she knows every single song. How is this possible? And I felt really cool for, you know, in my elementary school class, just being able to play along with any song. And so that was my moment where I was like, I need to just follow this down. But all this to say, so it's interesting because Indian classical music is largely improvised. And of course, you know, Western music and Indian music or I guess Western music and Eastern music, I'll say, split ways, you know, like 1,000 years ago when Western music kind of veered into notation. And the thing about notation is it's great for things like being able to sing in harmony or being able to do things in counterpoint, because of course you do the same or a similar thing each time, so it's predictable enough for you to be able to align things. And so that's an awesome thing that we have in Western music. However, what we're kind of losing in the process of notation is that subtlety of ornamentation, and there's so many ways to navigate between notes, and I think we have this notation system that looks like dots, and so we don't think a lot about the space in between the way that Indian musicians do. And so of course, when you try to notate an improvised tradition on the page, it looks insane. It looks so crazy. And so basically, it's like the past number of years of my life have been about trying to figure out both how to notate something that is kind of like a frozen version of an improvisation to allow Western musicians to engage with it, but then to notate it also in a way where it's flexible enough so that the musicians don't look at it and think, oh my gosh, this is just impossible. Because my music looks like it's very spiky and weird, but the minute that you play through it, you realize, oh, it's just kind of a more ornamented version of a melody that is completely recognizable. And I think one of the things that I have to, like you said, I have to really thank the world for is the fact that recording now is so ubiquitous. You can just like hum something into your phone and text it to someone, and they can immediately tell what you're talking about. Because with Indian classical music, how do they learn Indian classical music if it looks so complex on the page? They learn it through call and response. So these days, especially when I'm teaching, and especially when I'm teaching students, I will actually record, you'll see like videos of me teaching students how to sing choir pieces. And I actually go back and forth, like, I'm going to say this, now you say this. And we do it back and forth so that they learn in the way that the music is supposed to be learned. So for this piece, yeah, I did record some stuff. I recorded myself singing it so that people would have some sense of what the notation was supposed to represent, and then they can kind of interpret it from there.
Yeah, that's very, very interesting. And we were talking about that in the rehearsal actually on Tuesday, because we tend to think Western music as something that is written and the score has all of the information. But as you know, if you actually had the opportunity to compose, you know that the page can only have around 5% of the information. All of the other things is about oral tradition. You learn from your mentors, you learn from doing it. Actually, we are doing Colombia Tierra Querida. In my country, in Colombia, we also have a strong improvisational elements. We are doing improvisations in cumbia. It's a totally different thing. But that's part of music. It's a living element, and that's what is so amazing, and that's why we encourage you to come. Even if you have listened Tchaikovsky 5 for the 100th time, it's going to be a unique performance, because always is different, the people is different. One of the things that really was very interesting for me at the end of the rehearsal on Tuesday, after we were rehearsing your piece, is that Becky told me that she went to India. I don't remember how many years ago, but you said, and was very interesting because is, I believe what we have to do as musicians is we were able to create an environment in which Becky was able to see herself in India. Could you tell us a little bit of what you saw in the piece and the Taj Mahal, and how was this element of environment that was so amazing for me?
We were on a crazy do-it-yourself trip through India. My oldest son was working as a professor at the Chennai Conservatory and was deported after my other son, my other daughter were both university students, my daughter's best friend, so 3 university students and myself. So we already had everything paid for and purchased, and we had a minute of panic and decided that we could do it, that we could go to India and we could come back in one piece, so the only organized tour that we did when we were there was to go to the Taj Mahal, because I just couldn't figure out how to do it on our own. So it was a really small group. There were 2 Australian university students and the 4 of us and our guide. And so we go to the Taj Mahal, and it was so foggy. Everyone stands there at that reflecting pool and takes those beautiful pictures. well, you couldn't even, you couldn't even see the water in the reflecting pool because it was just this dense fog. And so we had to get really up close to the actual structure. And it was beautiful and so interesting, and some great musicians just hanging out there in the square, playing lots of music that your piece reminded me of. But as I listened to it, and I should say I had surgery on my shoulder and I cannot play the clarinet yet. So this concert has a lot of great clarinet parts, but it's just killing me not to play the clarinet part in your piece. But your piece just reminded me of standing there in that fog and listening. Music sounds different outside when it's foggy too than when it's clear. So these three guys, in their native clothing, one of them had that, I forget what it's called, that little keyboard thing.
The harmonium.
Yeah, that, yeah.
Yeah.
And there was some percussion and a guy singing. And it was just this really glorious situation. And as I listened to your piece being rehearsed, it just took me back. It was like I was there again. So your piece, if I didn't know anything, if I just stumbled upon your music, it would sound like India to me. So yeah, loved it a lot.
Yeah,
Oh, that's so sweet.
Yeah.
that's
Love
really
it.
amazing what you created, Rina. And thank you so much for allowing us to learn about your culture and learn about the different way to do music. As I will say, music is just one. It's just different genres, different styles, different things, but it's just one. And I wanted to ask you, well, I've been lucky to collaborate with many composers, premiering pieces and all of that. And there is always an element of what you want to achieve as a composer, as a musician, as a human, when you do those kind of things. Which one was your thoughts about Avartan? Which one's the thing you wanted to share with us?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think you must I know you've done a lot of research into this piece, so you must realize that there was initially a film that went along with this piece. And it was the idea, and what happened in the actual film was not what my idea had been of the film, but the idea would be that the piece would basically start as a transcription of very Indian sounding music. So I would make all the instruments really, like the piano is kind of plucking the inside of the strings to make that tanpura sound. And so it really was supposed to be a transcription. And then it slowly gets more and more Western. And you have to ask yourself, right, what does it sound to be 10% Western, to be 50% Western, and how do you kind of move that lens over? And at the end, it has kind of a brass chorale, which maybe to me was the most Western thing, a chorale and just straight harmony and brass instruments, and that's how it kind of ends. And so the idea was actually going to be this thing where at first you see this woman and she is dressed like in a sari and whatever, and you perceive her as an Indian woman in India. And basically it was going to kind of change and move through kind of different clothing shots until you see the same woman and she's dressed in like a t-shirt and jeans, right? And so we didn't quite get there with the film, but the opening shot and the closing shot, which are actually like a dear friend of mine whose name is Zabi Yamasaki, she posed for those two shots. And so that was the idea, is that for me, I was going through this thing at the time where, like, when actually, to talk about the Taj Mahal, this is so fascinating. When you are Indian looking, right? And you go to India, the whole kind of game is to basically make people think that you live in India so that you can get the local rates to go see these things. Because it costs like an order of magnitude more to go if you are not Indian than if you are Indian. And so of course, I did actually live in India. I did a Fulbright in India. And so I developed the kind of mechanism to make people think that I was a native Indian person who had grown up there. And so that was kind of part of the fun. But then I came back to America, and there were times when I would dress in Indian clothes and people would speak to me like they thought that I didn't understand English. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so fascinating, right? Because just based on what I'm wearing, or maybe the way I'm holding myself or whatever, people are making these judgments about what they think I know or don't know. And So that was what the piece was supposed to be about, was about this slow journey from what sounds very, very Indian to what doesn't necessarily sound Indian, but it's almost imperceptible as you kind of move through that lens.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And that's precisely our topic on the concert, because we are trying to reflect around what is to be an immigrant in a way, either we ourselves or our parents or our grandparents, because at the end, United States is like that. It's based on many cultures, many elements, and also how we start to find who we are. Tchaikovsky is exactly the same thing.
Right, right.
Its own things, and it's very interesting how all of the pieces have the same kind of topic in a totally different way, in a totally different style, but we are trying to understand who we are. And in that sense, I wanted to ask you the last question, Becky. You that has been with the orchestra for so many times, which are your desires for the concert? What are you expecting the audience to enjoy or to experience during our concert?
Oh, I can't imagine that people would not enjoy the concert. It's such a varied program. And so, as you said, the Tchaikovsky is just it's such a nationalistic piece. It sounds like Russia. And the Colombian piece sounds like South America, sounds like Colombia. And of course, Rena, your piece sounds like India. And I just think that people, it'll just be such an enjoyable hour and a half. And then I have to say, Diego is the most dynamic conductor I think I've ever experienced. And so I was wondering after rehearsal, I thought, wow, if he is this dynamic just in rehearsal, what are you going to be like at the concert, Diego? I mean, I just think that besides hearing really great music, it's such a pleasure both for the audience and for the players to experience what he draws from the score and what he can draw from the musicians. And I think it's a really exciting thing on both sides of the podium. It's super exciting for the musicians and then super exciting for the audience members. And I also too was struck on Tuesday night at rehearsal. Everybody's really far outside their comfort zone because we are there. Even Rena, there's a lot of American jazz in your piece as it evolves too. And classical symphony musicians, that gets us all a little itchy sometimes. When we did Rhapsody in Blue, Rachel, the other clarinetist, literally looked at me and said, I'm never playing that, right? And I said, I'll do it. I'll do it, So it's fun to see the players really thinking outside their boxes and just embracing all of the standard notation, though, that results in such different sounds. So I think the audience will really have a great time with this concert. And I can't imagine that anybody could come to this concert and not pick up on all of those things. So it's just a lot of fun,
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for your words. Now you put a lot of pressure on me. Let's see how it's gonna be. But yeah, thank you for all of that. And yeah, I've seen the same in the orchestra. They are doing a really, really great job. They put themselves 100%, and the level of concentration that I am seeing in the rehearsals, that means that we are gonna have a great concert. And we are enjoying a lot your piece, Rina. Once again, thank you so much for allowing the world to have this kind of music. Composers always allows those kind of things. I composed myself in my bachelor, but I never treat myself as a composer because I do it as a technical element, just to understand how this is an amazing thing, what you can do. The real composers is so amazing. Therefore, thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for your time today to sharing with us. And friends, remember, concert is October 22nd 3:30 p.m. at the Commons in Columbus, Indiana. Don't forget to take your tickets, invite many people, and remember, after that, there's going to be a huge party before we are going to celebrate also. Be ready for that. Thank you so much, Rina. Thank you so much, Becky, for your time. See you soon.
Yeah.